Hello, this is Yogeshwar again, and I'm back with another video on the Saturn transit. And I want to rush this as soon as possible because October is there already, and November is around the corner, and the transit of Saturn is happening on November the 2nd, 2014. So I would like everybody should be prepared and kind of see what the effect of Saturn is going to be, both from the point of view of moon sign and from the point of view of ascendant. And as I've already discussed in my previous videos, look at it from the moon sign and look at it from the ascendant as well. Although the ancient scriptures have described that the transit or gochara has to be looked at from the moon sign, meaning where the moon is placed. You also have to look at it from the ascendant because recent astrological research has found that it makes a lot of sense rather if you look at the transit of Saturn effect both from the moon sign as well as the ascendant, because the ascendant of Scorpio are also going to be equally affected, not equally but to some extent will be affected by this transit. So this video will cover the zodiac sign of Scorpio both as a moon sign and as an ascendant. And once again, I'll recommend people with the moon sign of Scorpio, meaning in their natal chart, if moon is sitting in the sign of Scorpio, which is number 8, or if it is shown as an ascendant as the topmost diamond square, as you can see on the screen, which makes it as an ascendant, they should also look at this video because they are also going to be impacted by the transit of Saturn. So as you can see on the screen here, the transit is happening from the zodiac sign of Libra into the zodiac sign of Scorpio. And as we all know that the ancient scriptures have described a dreaded period of Saturn, which is called the Sade Sati, or the 7.5 years dreaded period, which means that if Saturn transits the 12th, the first house and the second house, which are 3 consecutive houses from the moon sign, then it is called a Saturn Sade Sati period, or a 7.5 years period, because it stays in one zodiac sign for approximately 2.5 years. So here, as you can see on the screen, in case the moon sign is Scorpio, or if moon is sitting in the sign of Scorpio, in other words, for people who are not very familiar with what the moon sign is, you will see that Saturn is transiting from the zodiac sign of Libra into Scorpio, which means that it is moving into the 12th house from the moon sign into the first house, or the moon sign itself, which means that they are going to be in their second period of Sade Sati, because I just explained that Saturn stays approximately 2.5 years in one zodiac sign. So one has to be extremely careful about this dreaded period. Remedies have to be adapted. I will recommend go visit a Vedic astrologer, an expert Vedic astrologer, and he will prescribe several remedies for you. So what happens to the people with the moon sign, and also, like I said, consider the people with the ascendant sign of Scorpio as well. What happens in this transit, which is going to happen on November the 2nd, 2014, and it will stay in Scorpio approximately for about 2.5 years. Very important, because Saturn is one of those planets which stays in one zodiac sign for a long time, and it's a slow-moving planet. In Sanskrit, Saturn is called Shanishcharaya. Shanishcharaya in Sanskrit means slow mover. So over the entire 12 zodiacs, it moves in approximately 30 years, and in one zodiac sign it moves in 2.5 years. Very slow. So people have to be very careful, because if it was, say for example, another transit like a Mercury or a moon, they move pretty quick from one zodiac sign to another zodiac sign, which means that the effects will be there for a little period of time and then they move on to the next zodiac sign. So In this case, Saturn will stay for 2.5 years. So be very, very careful. Once again, do your remedies. But what will be the effects of Saturn in the zodiac sign of Scorpio? Now, as far as the ascendant, as you see, the Scorpio moon sign, it's going to affect the first house. And the first house represents what? It represents the body. So mostly the effects are going to be felt on the body, which means health has to be taken into consideration to a great extent. Do your yoga in time, do your vegetables and your salads and your greens and your good food and eating habits, exercise, whatever you do, meditation, all these are going to be extremely, extremely critical, of course, with the remedies which you do for Saturn. So it is going to affect the Lagna, which is the first house, which means the body and body itself. Now, as far as the aspect is concerned, Saturn is going to be looking at the third house for the moon sign of Scorpio, as well as for the people with the ascendant. Like I said, do not ignore the ascendant sign as well. So people both with the moon sign and with the ascendant of Scorpio have to look at this video and see what will be the effects of Saturn in the next 2.5 years, starting November 2nd, 2014. So the third house is not going to be much challenging, because even in the natal chart, the position of Saturn in the third house is not bad. Scriptures have described that even in a transit, the third house transit for Saturn is not considered to be bad. It's rather positive. So don't worry about that. And from the first house, because of its seventh house aspect, it's going to be looking at the seventh house, which is a house of relationships, marriage, business partnerships. That may be a little challenging. So although Saturn may not be that negative, looking at the seventh house, because seventh house Saturn, as per the scriptures, is not that negative, but still in transits we have to consider it being extremely challenging. So it will look at the seventh house, so be very, very careful on that. And more so, since as we know that the Sade Sati period is an extremely challenging and dreaded period, so the Sade Sati effects are going to be there, and it's going to affect, of course, the body, and of course also when it aspects the seventh house. So marriages, relationships, be very careful dealing with your spouse, your husband or wife, whatever. And also in business partnerships, extremely careful in business partnerships. Do not try to venture into new things as far as partnerships are concerned, or in case you are, be extremely careful. And in case you're extremely careful, along with that, do the prescribed remedies by the expert Vedic astrologer, as I have mentioned. And also its 10th house aspect from the first house is going to be in the house of profession, which of course can bring some challenges for people with Scorpio ascendant and Scorpio moon sign, more so with the Scorpio moon sign, and especially since you are in your Sade Sati, or a 7.5 years period, which is considered to be extremely challenging. Of course, the 10th house placement of Saturn, as per the scriptures, is not all that challenging, so I would not consider it to be extremely, extremely negative. However, in transits, you have to take into consideration, and once again, since you are going through your 7.5 years Saturn period, which is the Sade Sati, so the effects will be felt as far as the profession is concerned in a little challenging way. So do not be very disturbed, but at the same time be careful. You may face some challenges, and of course there are remedies. Also, as I've already explained in my previous videos to you, that you should not worry too much about the Saturn transit, because if there's a benefic planet like a Venus or a Jupiter which is transiting in your birth chart in a positive way, then most of the negative effects of Saturn can be nullified to some extent. So do not worry about it. And once again, I'm repeating, do your remedies for Saturn and you will be okay. Also, look at your dasha, your antardasha and your pratyantardasha, meaning which look at your main period, sub period and sub period, and if those are positive, then most of the negative aspect or the negative effects of Saturn Sade Sati or 7.5 period, and especially if you look at the Sade Sati period, it is in the middle of the Sade Sati period, meaning which it's going to affect your lagna, which is extremely challenging. But once again, in case your dasha, your Antardasha and Pratyantardasha, meaning which your period, subperiod, and sub-subperiod is positive, most of it can be nullified. Now, certain astrologers do say that look at your Ashtaka Varga as well. Look at your Sarva Ashtaka Varga. Now, what is Sarva Ashtaka Varga? Look at my video on Ashtaka Varga and you know what Sarva Ashtaka Varga is. People who are not familiar with what Ashtaka Varga is, if the Sarva Ashtaka Varga points of the zodiac sign of Scorpio is more than 28 or 28 and above, then of course the effects are not going to be that severe for this Saturn transit. So Sarva Ashtaka Varga is the total number, and Ashtaka Varga is that particular zodiac sign only. So look at both. Look at Sarva Ashtaka Varga number. If the number is more than 28 or 28, the effects are going to be less. However, the effects are going to be there. And then look at the Ashtaka Varga. If the Ashtaka Varga points of Scorpio in your birth chart, and you'll see it right in front of, when you see the matrix, you'll see it right in front of Saturn. So look at Saturn and look at the matrix, and in that matrix chart, you will see what Ashtaka Varga points you have under Scorpio. And if that Ashtaka Varga point is less than 4, if it's 3, 2, 1, 0, then there is a little more challenge. And in case it's 4 and above, 4, 5, 6, 7, then of course there is lesser of a challenge. Some astrologers feel that if it's more than 7, you don't even have to worry about a 7.5-year transit of Saturn. I personally do not agree. I've seen cases where even if the Ashtaka Varga points were high, even then the Saturn effects were felt. So please be very careful. Do not ignore the transit of Saturn. Saturn is here to give us rewards and punishment for our good and bad deeds, and it comes as a blessing to us because we accumulate so many bad deeds in our lives that unless it cleanses us in a periodic way, time to time, through transits, through dashas, antardashas, we will be overloaded with so much karma that we will not be able to handle it. So it's good. It comes as a blessing. It cleanses us. We have to keep doing our remedies. Do depend on the Sarva Ashtaka Varga points for Scorpio and the Ashtaka Varga points of Scorpio. If Sarva Ashtaka Varga points of Scorpio are 28 or above, the effects will be felt a little less. If Ashtaka Varga points of Scorpio are 4 and above, the effects are going to be less. However, the effects are going to be there. So I'm repeating myself. Please do your remedies. And both these moon sign of Scorpio and the ascendant of Scorpio have to look at it from the point of view that it will be transiting the first house for both of these, more so in the case of moon sign, but even for the ascendant of Scorpio, it will be transiting its first house for the next 2.5 years, starting November 2nd, 2014. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I will come up with another interesting topic in my next video. In the meanwhile, I will recommend subscribe to my channel and visit my website. There's a link below, and good luck to you. Thank you.